Welcome, everybody. I'm Jen Budd, former senior patrol agent with the United States Border Patrol, former senior intelligence agent, San Diego Sector Headquarters. With me today is my partner, Marianna Trevino-Wright from McAllen, Texas. How are you today, Marianna?
Hi, I'm doing great. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
All right. So you contacted me. How long ago was this? Was this like 2 weeks ago? It wasn't that long ago.
It was about 2 weeks ago, and the incident happened maybe a month before that. They are authorized to record these kind of interactions, not only while on duty, working at the National Butterfly Center, but the Supreme Court has ruled that civilians can record police in the performance of their duty.
Okay, so I want to remind people maybe who don't normally watch the podcast or listen to the podcast that Marianna is the executive director of the Butterfly Center it's the McAllen area, but that is actually in Mission, Texas, right next door to McAllen. And it is located right on the Rio Grande River, and so Border Patrol is constantly around there. And there are times where migrants are smuggled through, and Border Patrol comes out and tracks them in this. But what has happened is there's all sorts of things that have happened there. Is you have the Bannon wall, we build the wall shit. You guys have been targeted by them. You've been targeted by the Border Patrol, who claim that because you won't let them do whatever they want, whenever they want, which is like sick their canines on your employees, some of your employees, specifically males who perhaps their skin is brown, to sniff their crotches and see if they have any drugs in their crotches. That has actually happened. I'm not making that up. And they're constantly harassed. And so what we're going to talk about today is an example of what they all go through on if not a weekly basis, sometimes maybe a daily basis with different employees. And it tends to be those employees who white Americans would refer to as Hispanic or people of color. Let's play the video. I think it's only about 3 minutes long, and then we'll discuss it and explain it.
Yeah, I know. I see it.
Well, we're just trying to do our job.
Question, but you pull over everybody that comes out of the Butterfly Center?
I didn't know you came out of the Butterfly Center.
I know, but I saw you right there at the...
Yeah, but I didn't know you came out of there.
No, I know, but cuando salí de Benson, I saw, y luego te pegaste. Like I said, we're here. We're not doing nothing wrong, but we're going to the property in case you want to check it out.
I hardly work this area. You haven't seen me. I don't know who comes in, who comes out. I don't care who comes out. But what it looked like was when you went in, you went into a...
Leave a ladder.
Yeah, well, you went into a mobile home park.
That's my co-workers. They're working on it.
I didn't know, because usually it's winter Texas. Why are your keys here?
Well, it's a thing. My friend's a state trooper. So
who's your friend?
Well, he'd rather not say, but he lives in San Juan. But I do that. He told me, take the keys out, do the steering wheels, because it's for safety for everyone.
For everybody.
Sí, claro.
No, and I appreciate your support. But honestly, I didn't know you were in the Butterfly Park. I didn't know you worked there. I hardly work this area. That's why I don't know. And what I did see was that usually when people get up and do this thing, they're looking for that seatbelt thing to click.
No, hombre, ando bien apretados, pinches pantalones, mira.
All right, no problem. All right, you'll be safe, okay?
We worked it. Conmigo no hay pedo. Like I said, if you wanna...
Like I said, I don't know you work there. I don't know who works here. I don't work this area. Generally, I work further west.
Do you have a partner with you?
He's a state trooper, but out of Florida. We're just driving them around. They're assisting us.
Ah, bueno. Pues como te digo, everybody though, not just, when they come out of there, the properties.
Oh, out of the...
Because like I said, I've been watching you since here, and I saw you, I was like, oh, este va a comer tacos.
No, I thought you were...
doing illegal shit?
No. Like, people go into those parks in other areas to cut grass or to lawn service, or they're plumbers or doing some kind of service into those, because they're all usually winter Texans, right? So that's why I imagine.
Can I give you my boss's card to my wallet in case of whatever you need it?
Sure. But what do you do? What is it that you do?
I'm the grounds manager at the National Butterfly Center.
Oh, okay.
With my son.
Okay.
That's the one you gotta look out for.
That's your what?
That's the one you gotta look out for. Huh.
Oh, I don't know, bro. Like I said, I usually don't work that area.
But yeah,
like you've never seen me. Like
the thing is, I don't stare at you guys through the Now, if I'm looking to see who you are,
Yeah.
pues then I'm doing something wrong, you know?
And I know that you probably guys get stopped. I don't know.
All the time.
I don't know. See,
No.
I don't know. I don't really work that area that
That's
much.
that's what I'm saying. Like,
My area is usually that way, 82, 23rd, or...
is this considered highway though back there? The rural country?
As highway patrol, we can stop anywhere.
Anywhere, right?
It doesn't mean just because we're highway patrol, we're police for the whole state.
Mm-hmm.
So it has nothing to do with...
I was just wondering how it worked and stuff.
But our thing is, like, if there's a crash, a courtesy is like to say to the local PD, hey man, this is y'all's crash. Do you want to work it? Because it's through traffic.
Yeah.
And they say, yeah. Okay. Well, then go ahead. We give us the courtesy. It's like what happened in Uvalde. It was their traffic. So our courtesy is, how can we help you? They say, no, we're good here if you just want to.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, we don't want to jump because they know more than we do the area.
Yeah.
You understand?
I wanna.
But we work everything.
Okay.
All right, brother. You be safe, man. Thank you.
all right.
Thank you for your support.
Yeah.
So
Jen, I would love for you to break this down for folks who've just listened to this. I would say unbelievable, but we believe it because it's exactly what happens to us all of the time.
well, I'm going to
But-
tell you that I think most people will look at it, and certainly most white people will look at it that don't live on the border and be like, well, what's the big deal? It was just, he was friendly and all this other stuff. So yeah, I think we both should break it down because you're going to have different viewpoints because you deal with this every day. I think you can speak to, what it is to go through that and everything.
The employees, this was during work hours, they had left the National Butterfly Center on a public road, drove past the Border Patrol mounted patrol headquarters where the Border Patrol stables are, and there's a 24-hour operational facility there on the National Wildlife Refuge next door to us in the conservation corridor. They turned onto Benson Palm Drive, which is lined with residential subdivisions, and they drove into an RV park where one of my employees lives. She is 30 years old. She is not a senior citizen. She is not retired. And there are year-round residents at this RV park. It's not just those seasonal visitors they used to be referred to as snowbirds, retirees who head south for the winter. We call them winter Texans. So they were delivering a ladder back to her place. I mean, like everything in this video, you turned into this winter Texan community, and clearly you're not 55 or 65 years old. Oh, and you have a ladder in your truck. Do you do menial labor? And this is something we hear all the time. I have another video where a Border Patrol agent set up a blockade on the road at the Butterfly Center and stopped my staff. It was 4 Hispanic staff in the car, and he asked them all if they were janitors. Of course, one of them is a college educated biologist who is also president of the Texas Master Naturalist chapter. She is a certified wildlife guide who leads international trips for birding and butterflying. Yeah, because she's brown, she must be a janitor. I mean, it's so ridiculous. But in this video, my employee has turned off the vehicle and taken the keys out of the ignition. They have all expressed legitimate fear that if they don't do things like that, they may be, pulled out of the car, punched in the face,
Well, yeah,
whatever
because the
may
cops,
happen.
when they run up constantly, you hear, take the keys out of the car, turn the car off. So they're just doing ahead of time so that doesn't escalate. So that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why you hear that about, like, what's with your keys, or, it's because he has turned off the ignition, removed the keys. He has his hands where the officer can see them. And he says, it's just to make you guys feel more comfortable. It's so that my staff don't give the police any pretense for violence, for escalating this. And it is something that they live in routine fear of.
Let's go ahead and break this down. So the trooper's name is Trooper Hernandez.
A Hispanic man.
A Hispanic name, Texas DPS. We can tell by his uniform. Obviously, my thoughts are more from a Border Patrol law enforcement perspective. Not that I don't care, but I don't know what it is to be brown and live right on the border as your employees do and work right on the border. So, and I mean, obviously you're a white woman, but you experience this through your employees and so forth. So I think the thing that gets me the most is Trooper Hernandez keeps saying, thank you for your support. I thank you for your support. And so what he's controlling the conversation, he's controlling the narrative. And even though the driver, and we're not going to tell you their names, even though the driver has not once stated that he supports Trooper Hernandez and being pulled over like this. So he's putting words into his mouth because he realizes that the driver is questioning the stop. That is so this trooper is very experienced. You can tell he's an older trooper. And so he's stopped people before. Let me back up a second and say why this is so important is that we're having what's going on the border, especially in Texas and Arizona. I mean, you can count New Mexico too. It doesn't happen. It happens in California, but not like it does in Texas and Arizona, in that Border Patrol is giving their authority to stop people based on reasonable suspicion, which is a lower suspicion than what regular police and this officer from Texas DPS is required to have to stop vehicles. Regular police have to have probable cause. Probable cause. And that means they see you without your seatbelt. They see you if you're riding a motorcycle and you have a helmet law in your state, then that's a probable cause that a crime is being committed or something like that. And so then they can pull you over and question you. But the Border Patrol, according to the law, within 100 miles of any land or sea border, and I'll put up a map, that encompasses 2/3 of the US population. So it affects a large majority, more of us than you think it does. They can stop vehicles according to the Supreme Court, 1975 U.S. versus Brignoni Ponce, states that immigration agents, specifically Border Patrol, can pull people over just based on reasonable suspicion of being undocumented, because you can't look at somebody, even though the Border Patrol and everybody thinks you can, and tell what their alienage is. And so the Supreme Court says, and I don't agree with this, but this is their reasoning. Supreme Court says that because you can't see that somebody is undocumented because of your proximity to the border and all this, then therefore racial profiling is considered to be at least one of the acceptable reasonable suspicions for pulling somebody over. You have to have at least two. So the second one can be anything that we make up. You stared at us too long when you drove past us. You didn't look at us when you drove past us, which told me you were scared. Your car is heavily laden and it just seems suspicious. You're a single woman traveling alone. It can be absolutely, and even you can just say proximity to the border. And my experience as a Border Patrol agent is that this area is highly trafficked for smuggling and blah, blah, blah. And you won't even have to prove it. You just have to say that and they'll accept it. So what's going on is we have these police departments who, like Officer Hernandez, who've decided now that they're going to enforce immigration, even though they, as far as I know, have not been given legal authority necessarily to do that. And they are now the migra, which is short for inmigración, and they are stopping people based on reasonable suspicion, even though there's never been any court decision that says that they can do this and that this is okay. And so this officer knows. He knows, because the way your employee is questioning him, that this guy isn't your normal idiot. And so he starts this friendly, and he even at some point calls him bro. And they switched to Spanish a couple of times and this and that. So, and he's like, oh, thank you for your support and this and that. Yeah, I know that. I know that trick. I've done that before myself. You notice, I think the thing that I noticed too about the video is if we assume that he's right and he can use reasonable suspicion to stop you, what is the other thing other than your employee being brown, your two employees being brown? What's the other thing that he uses to stop him? And he just keeps saying he seems to believe his reason for the stop should not matter because he normally does not work in that area. That has no legal basis. There's nothing in the law that says that's acceptable.
He's grasping at straws. He says, well, your seatbelt. And you can hear my employee saying, dude, we saw you. Like,
I have
from
my
the time,
seatbelt.
yeah, from the time we left the Butterfly Center, and he even asked, do you pull over everybody leaving the Butterfly Center? So, my employees had their seatbelts on the entire time. They saw that they were being observed and followed, and then pulled over, lights and sirens, by this state police officer who just keeps like throwing shit against the wall to justify the stop.
Exactly. I mean, he's like, well, I didn't see you coming out of the Butterfly Center. It's like, well, then why are you fucking stopping me? I haven't broken any laws. There's nothing wrong with my vehicle, according to what you're saying. There's no taillights out. There's nothing going on. He even admits his stop was because he thought the driver was going into a mobile home park.
It's a residential neighborhood.
It's a residential neighborhood.
You can drive in and out of anybody's residential neighborhood
unless they have a gate.
Yeah, unless it's gated.
But that's not a legal reason to stop anybody, and it violates the driver's rights regardless of any excuses he's giving. So he has no probable cause. He has zero reasonable suspicion aside from that these men have brown skin. I mean, and it's interesting, that law, or the Supreme Court decision, was in 1975. Immigration has changed a lot since then. When I was an agent in the 90s, predominantly it was Mexican males coming across, single Mexican males coming across. But nowadays, white asylum seekers coming across from Russia, Belarus, Ukraine, Poland, all over the place. And then you also have Black asylum seekers from Haiti, from Cameroon, Asian. Yeah. You have asylum seekers from India. You have asylum seekers from everywhere. So this concept that your skin color somehow should be part of the reasonable suspicion or probable cause, or whatever reason that you're pulling people over, it doesn't hold to today, and it should be brought back up in the courts and looked at again. So this law is obviously targeted towards Latinos, and it does not address undocumented people of all skin colors, and therefore that makes it biased. But it is still the law right now. So
this business of, there's racial profiling, but there's also vehicle profiling.
Yeah.
So, the fact that he is in a truck with a ladder and a Hispanic male with a Hispanic male passenger, it's like, do you think they just either left the border wall with the ladder or headed to the border wall with the ladder? When they announced Operation Lone Star, they announced that they would specifically be targeting Hispanic males. And there's all this rhetoric about Hispanic males that specifically are intended to communicate the idea or message the public that Hispanic males are a threat just by being Hispanic and male, that this is an invasion. It promotes this war narrative, which of course, Texas is invoking with their legal filings related to these murder buoys that they've put in the river. That is Texas's sovereign right to defend themselves against this hostile invasion of Hispanic males, but as we know, also Black males and any dark-skinned male, whether they're Asian, Indian. What was it Trump said? We need more from Norway. We need more, So
yeah, the Norwegians, we like them.
So even this directive from the state,
it's blatantly
to me,
racist.
And I'm not a lawyer, would appear to be a civil rights violation to any Hispanic person that is stopped without probable cause by local, county, or state police. Here's another thing. My employee keeps it pretty friendly with this trooper.
Well, yeah.
No good reason is ever given, and no valid reason is ever given for the stop. But I know from Victor Escalon, the regional director of Texas DPS, with whom I interact frequently, that all stops by Texas DPS troopers must result in one of three things, according to their own policy, protocol, and guidance. If they pull someone over, that must result in either a warning, which is written, or a citation, which is, I have to give you a speeding ticket, or,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, or your arrest.
Mm-hmm.
So your whatever it is has to be so egregious that they take you into custody. Not one of those things happened as a result of this, which makes this kind of traffic stop, in my opinion, the equivalent of New York's stop and frisk, which was ruled
I agree.
to be illegal and unconstitutional.
I agree. One of the excuses I used to use when I would go to pull somebody over and I realized like it was a local or something like that. And I could tell because they come flying out their cars, especially if they're white. And I'd be like, oh, dude, that wheel, it looks like it's a wobbly when you're going. I'm just trying to, and then they'd be, oh, okay. Especially because I was female and stuff. So there's all sorts of tricks you can use. But I mean,
I have been pulled over with that one.
yeah. Yeah, that's a good excuse too. I think and neither one of us are lawyers, but I think if somebody had done that to me, what I would, and obviously you have to decide what's good for you. I would say, I would like you to cite me for this and say, or not cite me, but I would like you to give me a warning and say what it is, the reason why you pulled me over, so that you can document what they're saying, and force them to write that down. And if they don't write them down, then you ask for their supervisor. You have to be very careful if you do things like that. You're asking for trouble, so you need to think about that, especially if you're a person of color. One of the reasons why this is so important is obviously you're looking at peace officers. They are lowering their suspicion requirements to be able to stop vehicles without the court saying so otherwise. So the question is, does Texas DPS have the right to assume immigration authorities and stop people for reasonable suspicion of being undocumented? This is the big question. Even if we assume that they do have that authority, this stop doesn't even meet that. So did you talk to the head of DPS or this guy Escalon about this specific stop? And did he tell you why they're allowed to do this now?
I talked to him after probably each of these stops.
Okay.
And so there are a couple of things. They do claim that they have the authority to assist Border Patrol with all immigration enforcement. And
was Border Patrol present?
Border Patrol was not present for this, although frequently they are. And frequently it will be a Border Patrol agent driving with a DPS officer in the vehicle, or vice versa. In this case, Texas DPS Trooper Hernandez had a Florida highway patrolman riding shotgun.
He knows even less about what he's doing in that area.
But in this case, what Escalon has said justifies these sort of routine traffic stops is that it was a routine traffic stop that snagged Timothy McVeigh, a notorious, the one of the Oklahoma City bombers, a terrorist who, blew up the federal building, a white nationalist who murdered people. And that is what makes these stop and frisk traffic stops so valuable to law enforcement and to all of us. They are keeping us safe by doing this because they may catch another Timothy McVeigh.
Okay, so here is why Timothy McVeigh's stop was not, as they describe, a routine traffic stop. They had a bolo out on the guy, be on the lookout for. And so a routine traffic stop is, for a peace officer, is they still have to have probable cause. They have to think that you're speeding. They have to think that you're not wearing a helmet. They have to think that you don't have a seatbelt on, or that your kids are not in their car seats, or whatever the law is in your state. And then once they stop, they have to establish that what they believe they saw actually is what they saw. And so it's just ridiculous. So what Escalon is doing is he's pulling out an example of when they stopped a really bad white guy. And so that is not racism.
Who was already a suspect.
Who was already a suspect. So that is not routine, my friend. That is not routine.
For a crime that had already occurred.
Not a crime that already occurred, yeah.
Not this Minority Report bullshit where you're a Hispanic male on the border in a truck, so we think you might be going to commit a crime.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the whole reason why police officers have to have probable cause. So we're going backwards in the law and as far as protecting people's civil rights. I think, what also got me too is I love this jab he throws in at Uvalde PD and Uvalde School PD, because they have two separate PDs there in Uvalde. They got so much DH money, they don't know what to do with it. So they just create new police departments. And I'm not defending the actions in Uvalde of any of the police officers involved there. But I love how he's like, well, that's the reason why Uvalde happened, is because, it wasn't us, Texas DPS, it was Uvalde's. Way to throw your fellow police officers under the bus there, Trooper Hernandez.
Well, and we know that Texas DPS, during that active school shooting, took command of the situation.
Yeah.
And they're part of the reason that children and others, 2 school teachers died, bled to death in the hour or so that it took for law enforcement to work up the courage to breach and try to stop that shooter. Yeah. And so it was Border Patrol there. It was Texas DPS. It was the school district police. It was the county sheriff's office and the municipal police. It was all of them. And they did nothing. But again, even our game wardens are now on the river, on the border. Our state park police are here. None of them are taking care of any crimes related to wildlife or natural resource conservation. They're all now just watching, harassing Hispanic people, participating in immigration enforcement, which is not their job.
Exactly. And there is valid reason why certain agencies have limitations on their authority. And this is one of those instances. And I think, you had mentioned that sometimes you see Texas DPS riding with Border Patrol. I want to state that that's training. So Border Patrol's training them in their racist, reasonable, suspicious propaganda and all that stuff that they do. And then what you see here is you see this Texas DPS agent officer then turning around and he's teaching the guy who's with him, the Florida State Highway Patrol officer as well. So yeah, this is what peace officers are trying to get on all around the borders and everywhere. And it's just going to keep spreading into the interior of the United States.
I do want to say that in addition to training, they're all dressing the same. So we have DOD people here, National Guard and U.S. Army. We have Texas National Guard. And of course, they're all wearing similar camo, similar fatigues. Some may be brownish, other may be green. And then in addition to that, we have Texas DPS wearing green fatigues and camo now. And of course, Border Patrol in their traditional green. And in addition to that, they're wearing patches that I don't believe are part of their official uniform, like Punisher patches and others. So we don't even know at this point, when we interact with somebody representing themselves as law enforcement, especially if they're in an unmarked vehicle, whether these are even legitimate law enforcement or are they militia people?
I think it's interesting that he uses this excuse, Escalon uses this excuse, Timothy McVeigh. And it's kind of like 9/11. They always use their failures as an excuse to get more money, to get more Uvalde and all this, to get more power. I keep seeing the Border Patrol as saying, the cartel runs the border, kind of bullshit and this and that. Well, the cartel runs the border because you let them run the border. You have more Border Patrol agents than you need. You've been telling us for 35 years that deterrence policies work. You've been telling us to listen to you. You claim that everything was fixed under Trump, but that's not actually true, and you're lying about that. I mean, it's just, it's insane. Every failure that they have, they use to take away more and more rights. Let me ask you, what does this do to your employees who have perhaps darker skin? What is it that they feel that they have to go through? Why is this important to them personally? And I do want to say one thing is that even if you do what the Border Patrol and these authorities tell you to do, put your hands up, take your hands out of your pocket, all this other stuff. Look at Mr. Raymond Mattia, Kahana Autumn Nation, TO Nation in Arizona. That man did exactly what the Border Patrol told him to in within 1 second, and they killed him. 3 agents out of 10 shot and killed him. The other 7 knew he was doing as he was ordered, but the 3 agents didn't. So even with taking his keys out of the car and doing exactly what he's being told, am I being hyperbolic by saying that your employees perhaps have a fear of this happening to them?
All of them know that it's possible. Is it probable? We would like to believe not, but that it is possible. And they know that should something like that happen, whether by Florida Highway Patrol, Texas National Guard, Texas DPS, or Border Patrol, that the Border Patrol CITs will be called in to take control of the whole situation and frame the narrative and obstruct justice and deny any truth finding in whatever may happen. And, my staff, especially if they're in the work truck, they are going to have things like axes, machetes, maybe a chainsaw. They definitely
a ladder.
A ladder.
A ladder.
In addition to having, WD-40 and, other things. Even I carry a Leatherman, which has a knife in it. So the justification, quote unquote, will be pretty easy. And this particular employee who was stopped this time, in 1 week, was stopped 3 times. 3 times in 7 days. Every other day, basically, on his way to work and as he arrived at work. And only one of those interactions resulted in a citation. The Texas DPS agent who pulled up behind him, this employee had gotten out to open the gate, to open the center for the day. The trooper waited until he got out of his vehicle to turn on the lights and sirens, which is when the cameras start working, then claimed that my employee had a tail light out. And as other employees arrived and they were like, what's happening? It was like, well, he says, my tail light's out. It was documented then and there to the trooper that the tail light was not out. Of course, the trooper's like, well, it wasn't working when you were driving down the road, so you still need to get that checked out. Your vehicle is not properly maintained. It's not road safe. It's all this bullshit. And they did give him a ticket, that time. This
They
young
got a
woman,
ticket for what? For his taillight working? That happened to us in Del Rio in the Haitian issue when they were keeping the Haitians under there. They stopped one of my people because she was brown and she had black Haitians in her car who were American citizens. They were delegates from Miami. And they said, we stopped you because your taillight's out. And she goes, well, it's a rental car. And she gets out, turns the car back on and the lights back on, gets out and he goes, oh, well, it's working now. Well, let me give you a warning. A warning for what? For my taillight working?
the young woman who lives in that RV park, she was stopped about every other week for a couple of months.
Is she Latina?
She's Latina, and she's driving all alone in her car to work. But their reason for stopping her was, we've been watching you and you drive this way every morning. What are you doing? And she said, I'm going to work.
Oh my God.
She never got a written warning or citation or anything. She would just get followed and stopped and questioned. This is stop and frisk. And we have relayed these things with audio, with video, with written statements from me, from my staff, to the ACLU. Because somebody like the ACLU or Texas Civil Rights Project, somebody needs to take this up and sue the state of Texas over it. And what we continue to be told is there are just so many things right now still, for some reason, I guess.
The NGOs and ACLU and everybody, they are overwhelmed and they have to triage this stuff. We think that this is a long-term goal of our local peace officers, is they want this immigration authority because it requires a lot less for them to stop you. And let me tell you, I'm all over the border in different cars, sometimes rental cars. And let me tell you, I never get stopped. And I am driving down dirt roads. I'm driving around Border Patrol as they're dragging their tires right along the border wall and stuff. And you may think, oh, they know who she is. They don't know who I am. Border Patrol agents out in the field, very rarely. I've never actually had a Border Patrol agent. I recognize you. Never once. They don't watch the news. They don't listen to, they're watching Fox News and they're on the right-wing social media platforms. So this is racially motivated, and we need to document this so that we can make these cases for groups like the ACLU and so forth.
When you were here visiting me and we stopped and talked to those two agents on the levee, I know they knew I was the butterfly lady. Did they not know who you were that day?
They had no idea who I was. And at first they were pretty open to me because I had said I'm a ex-Campo agent, and I threw in some Border Patrol slang, and I whispered to you, I'm going to use a racist Border Patrol word for a migrant. I just want to warn you. And I did that. And they started talking to me. And then when I switched and said, I don't agree with all this stuff and how you're harassing people, then they started to shut down. Then they were like,
another justification that's come from Texas DPS, from McGraw, from Abbott, and it's been echoed by Escalon and others, is they're targeting Hispanic males because they claim that those are most frequently the traffickers, the ones transporting humans and drugs or, whatever it is. And I have friends who work in Border Patrol, former neighbors and others. And what I've been told is that the most suspicious people for them on the road, especially heading to the Falfurrias checkpoint and even driving along the border, is single females with a Hispanic person or baby in the car. That it's actually women, and sometimes even white women.
It's a lot of whites. A lot of white. It's not to say like, so a lot of the people leading them across on foot are, yes, tend to be Latino or Hispanic, but once they get to the vehicles and stuff and they're trying to get through the checkpoints and everything, a huge percentage are white because they know that Border Patrol is racist. I had entire smuggling organizations in Campo that I worked on for many, many years, and they always picked white drivers. And they're usually, quite frankly, they're usually addicted to drugs. And that's why they're having to do it for a quick $1,000 or $2,000 or something like that. So this constant targeting of Hispanics and stuff is consistently racially motivated and doesn't even align with the facts of who is actually smuggling the majority of undocumented people. You're right. And the drugs. You're right.
So it only then has more to do with intimidation, oppression, even terrorism of Hispanic people on the borderlands by law enforcement, which of course our region has a notorious prolonged history of, starting about 100 years ago with La Matanza, where an estimated 15,000 Hispanics were killed by predominantly white law enforcement. I mean, it just, first of all, people don't know the history. Now they don't know their rights. We are very fortunate that we have had Texas Civil Rights Project and the ACLU come and teach us about our rights and also caution us about exercising or invoking those, because for some reason that triggers and provokes law enforcement. And I just don't get it. I mean, these are the people that we count on to uphold our laws, but they're breaking it routinely. And then when you say, hey, I happen to know my rights, or I know the law, very much kind of like my employees doing, why'd you stop me? Even a question as simple as that, pushing back, wanting to know what is your legal basis for pulling me over, triggers law enforcement. Why is that?
Because it's they always have to be in the right. They're always right, you're always wrong. And that's why he throws out the my buddy thing. He calls them brother. Here's the thing, and this is going to be kind of harsh. I mean, I'm an admitted racist. Obviously, I was a Border Patrol agent. I had problems with racism and ethnocentrism and so forth that I had to deal with. I think the difference in the past, you were talking about La Matanza. Can you say that for me?
La Matanza, which just means the massacre.
The massacre. A lot of the differences back then, it was the majority of law enforcement was white. And today, obviously, there's a fair mix. The majority of Border Patrol agents are Hispanic or Latino. And I want to say to all of you officers out there who think that because you wear that patch and you've gone through those academies, that somehow you're exempt from this, that by putting on that badge and that gun, that somehow you've joined these guys and you're not going to be targeted. I can tell you there's Border Patrol agents who've had to sue their own agency because they have been harassed off duty at checkpoints. So it will happen to you. The things that you're enforcing, the things that you're doing to your fellow citizens, your fellow people of color, your fellow residents of color is going to come back to haunt you, because you will never be white enough. And once you get rid of everybody else, you get rid of the gays, you get rid of the brown people you don't like, you get rid of the blacks, you get rid of the non-Christians, they're going to come for you. And that's how it's going to work. And that might be cruel and that might be rude, but you will never be white enough. And I told that to one of my classmates because he noticed in the Border Patrol that mostly the managers are white, even though the majority of agents are Hispanic or Latino. And I will never be man enough. I will never have a big enough schlong to be considered one of the guys in the Border Patrol. That's just a fact. And he recognized that women were like that. But then when I said there's racism, and he was like, oh, come on. And I'm like, dude, you're saying it yourself. And so this will turn around eventually. If they keep going the way they are, this will turn around. This will happen to one of their family members. This will happen to somebody they love. And unfortunately, it might escalate and get even worse. And then when they go to complain, well, all those excuses that you've given to everybody else, same reason.
Yeah, you had too much melanin in your skin.
I spoke to, there's a Black writer I follow, and she goes by the name on Instagram and Twitter, Caffeinated Living. And yeah. And I had asked her, because people ask me, how can Latinos go and be in the Border Patrol and enforce laws against their own people? I said, is there a succinct way to put that? And it's because they're seeking exceptionalism. And I did this too as a woman and as a gay, as a lesbian, when I went to the Border Patrol. I thought going in there was equality. It's not. You're seeking the exceptionalism. You're seeking the privilege that the white people have, that the white police officers have. And that's not equality. You're seeking privilege. And when it comes down to it, once we get everybody else under control, then we'll come after you. I love this Trooper Hernandez, to get back to the video, of saying like, well, I don't even work here. That has nothing to do with anything. The law is the law in Texas. You either know the law in Texas or you don't know the law in Texas. And if you understanding the law, Trooper Hernandez, requires you to work in the same little neighborhood day after day after day, then maybe you shouldn't switch positions. You know, I mean, seriously, I can't do my job because, oh my God, I'm in a new neighborhood and I don't know anybody. Get the fuck out of here.
You know, my employee handled this interaction really well. If it had been me, and again, you and I both talk about our privilege, and he said that to me about like, oh, I don't even work this area, I would have been like, you don't even go here. I would have just quoted Mean Girls to him. It's like, I know,
we are a bunch of mean girls.
I know, bro. You don't even go here.
Don't even go here, motherfucker. So I'm going to say, on my experience as a Border Patrol agent in doing immigration stops along the border, and my experience in studying the Border Patrol and deterrence policies, I'm going to say that Trooper Hernandez is well aware that he is violating the law. That is why he is, thank you for your support, and throwing in all these other things and causes and reasons and blah, blah, blah. He's doing this to prevent your employee from filing a lawsuit for violating his rights, for stopping him. And he knows that this is an illegal stop.